Hey everybody, and welcome back. So this video is another request being made from a fan or a follower, pal, whatever I try to call them. And I'm guessing that this is either a high school or a college student because they said that this summer they've been doing a lot of flying while they're out of school. So let's get into this. This video is talking about multi-engine RC aircraft. And basically the email was like, hey Dag, I've seen in many of your videos where you show pictures of twin engine RC airplanes that you've flown or you designed in the past. The neat thing is that this young person is flying glow fueled airplanes, which I think is absolutely stellar. If you've been following me for any length of time at all, you know I am obsessed with giant scale electric airplanes. Everything I fly is electric. I love to design my own airframes and build them and fly them. I've been doing RC since the 80s, started with gliders. And I only share my experiences that I've done here on my channel. If you've been following me for any time at all, you know I love to share what's worked for me, and hopefully that will work for you. I don't like to speculate. I don't like to make up stuff. It's pretty much what I've done. Before I get too far into this, I want to do a shout out to my sponsor, RTL Fasteners, or one of my sponsors, and they're an incredibly cool company, everybody. If you go to the website, you're going to see bolts and nuts that are metric standard. You're going to see blind nuts, lock nuts. You're going to see every type of fastener you could use with RC aircraft, okay? Servo screws, you name it. Go to their website, use top secret code DA30, and you will get 30% off any order over $50. So use code DA30, any order over $50, you get 30% off. So the best way that I want to kind of start this off is when I was flying model aircraft, first flying RC aircraft, I started with a glider, like I said, and I got into a Goldberg Eagle 2, which was a high wing trainer. And I loved the way it flew. And I came across a weird, because I worked part-time on the weekends at a hobby shop, and there was a one of the early ARF kits, and I can't remember the name of this ARF, and I mean, this was like, I don't know, 92 or 93, and yeah, I'd been flying about 10 years probably when I started working at the hobby shop. But long story short is, there was an ARF kit that came back missing like the landing gear and some hardware. And I said, hey, I'll buy this because I'll turn it into a Frankenstein plane. So I took that ARF and I put these two engines on it and cut the nose off it, put the pointy nose on it. The stupid canard on the front of this caused really bad pitch problems, so I broke those back off. But in this picture, this is technically the first multi-engine RC airplane I built myself. And I really didn't build it because it was an ARF, but it's my first design, or whatever you want to call it, my Frankenstein, okay? So I flew this plane about 5 or 6 times, severely underpowered, would barely fly with the two engines running perfect. So I cut the nose off it and made it longer, put an engine on the vertical stab, and made a trilander out of it. So this person who emailed me said, I want to get into twins. I'm a newbie. Is there anything I should consider? And I'm going to talk more about flying twins in this video than designing twins, okay? Because I want people to understand that flying a twin is kind of a different world, but it's not that different. It can be a really quick way to destroy an airframe, or it can be a way to have a lot of fun flying an airplane, especially 2 engines or 3 or 4 engines just seem cool, okay? So my second one that I flew was this A10 I designed, and this was completely scratch built, except try to remember where I got the wing on that, because I don't remember building the wing. The interesting thing about this airplane is, if you notice in the picture, and if you can see in this resolution, there's no rudders on this. But if you look at the nose gear, there is a airfoil in the nose gear. So when I would turn the nose gear, the plane would actually turn a little bit, but there was not enough there to counteract if I lost an engine. But even if I would have lost an engine, this plane was severely underpowered. With both engines, it flew okay. On one engine, it would not fly. And I'm going to get to in a minute why that matters with a twin, okay? This was my third scratch built of a multi-engine airplane, and this was a C-130. Now, that was a Gentle Lady glider wing that I took all the dihedral out of and rebuilt a spar across the top of it. And this airplane would fly great on 3 engines, but it wouldn't fly great on 2 engines. And I started off flying this one with, I think each had 4-ounce little glow tanks in it. And I couldn't get more than like a 5-minute flight out of it. So I did something really stupid in hindsight. I just didn't know any better. I put one big fuel tank in the fuselage. But if you fly glow engines, on the exhaust is a little nipple, an air nipple, that will feed air pressure to your fuel tank. And that pressurizes the fuel tank to push the fuel to the motor. Well, I had 4 pressure lines coming to one big fuel tank. And if one engine died, that means that pressure could back out of that. I didn't have like a one-way reed valve on that pressure tap. So if one engine died, that vent became a place for the pressure to escape out of the engine, causing all the other engines to go lean. So I took off with the airplane, had an engine die, and then heard all the other engines increase RPM a little bit, which told me they were leaning out. And then the number 2 died, then the number 1 died, and then I stalled, spun it in, and crashed it. 100% my fault. And it was just a textbook stall spin. And that's where the reason I'm doing all this is I'm kind of segueing this into what it really means to fly twin engine model airplanes. First of all, you want to choose an airframe that makes sense if you want to get into flying multi-engine airplanes. If I had my choice to start all over again flying multi, I would pick something that has a long tail. I'd pick something that's got a big rudder. I would pick something that's got adequate power. I'd pick something that's bigger than smaller. And if you watch any of my cube wing loading videos, you understand that bigger aircraft react differently to air molecules, the air that it flies through in the in the sky. Weight is very critical on twins. The lighter they are, they just absolutely fly better. Like I mentioned, the rudder size. And then you need to think about your skills. Now, when I say skills, I don't mean your skills on how do you fly on one engine. Because most model airplanes will not fly on one engine. Even if you're hauling ass through the sky at full throttle and lose an engine, you might be able to keep it in the air on one engine. But when it comes to landing that, chances are you just need to pull the engine back to idle and glide in. Now, this is my experience. Yours may differ. Your mileage might be completely different because I want to talk about some of the twins I've flown besides the ones I designed. Okay? But I want you to think about, and when I talk about the airframe, you can look at some twins and just kind of figure out in your mind if that makes sense. If you've got the engine nacelles way out on the wings, I mean, there's an awful lot of moment arm if one engine isn't running at the same RPM. And I'm talking about glow. With electric, you don't have to worry about it. And I'm going to talk a lot more about glow and gas in this video because twin engine electrics are heaven. Okay, you don't lose engines. I mean, if you've done the ESC battery and all that, and I'll get in that in a minute, electric twins are not that. You fly that like a regular single engine airplane most of the time. But here's what I want to tell you you've got to be religious about if you're going to fly internal combustion engines that are twins. It doesn't matter if it's glow or gas. You have to have clean fuel. Okay? I see people at the field basically eating powdered donuts and fueling an airplane, and I'm exaggerating. But you've got to have clean fuel. You've got to have good plugs, either glow or spark plugs. Your engine has to be tuned that you know it's never going to quit. Okay? And I've helped a lot of people set up glow and gas twins. And one of the things, my friend, and I'll talk about his P38 here in a minute, but what we did was we took both his engines, built stands in his garage, and I think they were quarter 42s, if I remember. This was 20 years ago. but they had the ignition and everything built into it, you know, with the magnets and everything. It didn't have an electronic ignition. It had a magneto ignition, much like your weed eater has. And we ran a gallon through each of those engines and got them tuned so that they would idle literally for 25 minutes, and we would bring up the power and they wouldn't bog down and die. We tweaked those two engines perfectly and put them in the P38, and I'll talk about that story in a minute. But you've got to make sure clean fuel, clean plugs, or healthy plugs. Your engine is tuned properly. If you're going electric, your motor, ESC, and batteries are all sized right. Okay, and then you got to look at some basics. Make sure your center of gravity's right, and make sure that the systems in the aircraft all work. Because the thing that I've noticed, and I only try to talk about my own personal experience, but I saw a twin one time almost hit a bunch of people in a video because the number 1 engine or the number 3 engine, or number 4 engine, I can't remember which engine it was, but the servo had actually gone bad on the throttle. And when they went to take off, the engine was running, so visually it looked like they didn't have a dead engine, but it never throttled up. So when they throttled up the other 3, they couldn't hold heading with rudder, jerked the plane into the air, went over the audience and crashed. And there could have been serious injury there. And to me, whoever set that plane up, it was a pre-flight failure. When they pre-flighted the airplane, they missed that one engine throttle wasn't working. But me being the nerd I am, I noticed something else. I saw about a year later a B-25 Mitchell crash, and it was interesting. Well, I saw it crash from like 200 yards away. So I'm not saying that anything they did that caused it to crash, but I did see that airplane fly that day. And when they did a control surface check moving the sticks, the rudders only moved like 5 degrees left and right. Okay? If you have any chance of flying a twin with an engine down, you're going to have 35 degrees of rudder. Okay? Beyond that, you can get into stalling rudders, or I don't want to get into that because there is a lot of controversy if you can really stall it or when it just becomes less efficient. Okay? But you've got to have 35 degrees of rudder movement on a rudder if you think you're going to try to counteract the asymmetrical thrust of an engine failing. But now I want to get into just a little bit about what that means. So a lot of people may not know this, but in full-scale general aviation aircraft, there are many twins that aren't even designed to fly on one engine and hold altitude. You have 2 engines to go fast. So let's say that you, and I'm making this up, you had a Warrior airplane made by Piper, and it had, and let's say it was the Cherokee Warrior, which has a 180 horsepower motor in it. Okay, and I think it's 180. I know the Archer's 180. I think they're both 180. Maybe the Warrior's 160 and the Archer's 180. Whatever. You cut the nose off it, put a point on it, and you put 2 150 or 160 or 180 horsepower motors on it. You're still going to go really, really fast now, but you still have 180 horsepower, but now you've got the weight of an extra engine, and the maximum weight of the airplane probably increased a little bit because of the other engine. Okay, so what I'm trying to get you at, only commercial airliners that I know personally have to be rated to fly with an engine failing. So don't think you have 2 engines because the second engine is going to save your ass. The engine that fails is basically determining where you're going to crash. Because I have flown a lot of twins, folks, and we've messed around with filling one tank up and filling one tank up half, and me getting up really high and just seeing if we can fly it with one engine down. Nowadays I would just put that on my radio so I could turn on and off the throttle to that motor or engine. But twins are awesome, but both engines have to run. Okay? you're looking right now at the Mosquito I designed, and I haven't built this airplane yet. But some of the things that stick out in my mind, this will be electric, so I know I'm not going to have an engine failure unless I've sized the ESC or motor wrong or pre-flighted it wrong or something like that. But something I want you to think about on twins is you actually have twice the problems now of something going wrong. The reason the airline or commercial big people movers went from 4 engines to 2 engines is they're a lot more reliable, which means if the plane can fly on 1 engine and it only needs 2 engines for performance, there's a lot less moving parts. So if you're going to build a twin or buy a twin or a multi, I should be saying a multi-engine here, I love twin engine multis. 4 engine multis kind of become a pain in the ass because if it's glow, you got 4 fuel systems, 4 glow plugs, 4 carburetors you got to have tuned. A long time ago, my friend had a Royal Aircraft B-17, I think it was, and it had 20s in it. And this airplane never landed with all 4 engines running, never. And we had nice little OS engines in it, I think. I don't think they were Super Tiger, but we never landed that airplane, and he was terrified of flying it because it was a multi, and he had me fly it probably 90% of the time. And we never landed with all 4 engines running. So on the flip side of it, I want to talk about a friend of mine that built a really great Zeroli P38. And he had G38s, I think they were, I think they were 38s. I can't remember. I don't think they were the Quadra 42s. I think they were G38s. But it's irrelevant. Him and I really went through this airplane. He built a beautiful airplane. This was probably 20 years ago. And it had robot retracts. I mean, it was absolutely, I was even scared to fly this plane. I mean, there used to be a day that I didn't mind flying. And he built another airplane I'll show you in a minute. And I'm just showing you these 3D planes I have because I don't have any pictures of his airplane. But his P38, to me, was one of the funnest airplanes in the world. And I'm not going to go into the design of the aircraft because I know some people that's had the elevator flutter on P38s and crashed them. And you got to make sure your linkage and all of that, but I don't want to digress and talk about design right now. But there was a time that I always told him that if I lose the engine, I'm just landing whatever direction the plane's going. And he's like, I'm cool with that. And when I took off, I flew that plane really fast. I never slow flew. And I personally, if I'm an electric twin or multi, I would slow fly it just to play around or to look scale. If it's gas or glow, I was always terrified of an engine dying. Now with gas, they're a lot more reliable, at least from my experience, than a glow engine as far as staying running. I had a 3W150 that never died once it did die once where I ran out of fuel, but it never just quit because I didn't have it tuned right. Okay? But this P38, the way I flew it, and this is the way I would my advice to you, is when you're taking off, don't do steep climbs. Don't climb, for the sky. Just take off and do scale takeoffs. Very few times will you see a internal combustion fighter plane, radial or V12 or whatever in full scale real life, just take off and go vertical. Now you might see them go down the runway real fast and then go up, but very rarely do you see them get their gear up and then just start climbing. That keeps you in a corner that if you lose an engine, you're already close to stall, and that other engine, you may not be quick enough to pull the throttle back, and it's going to auger you over. So if you're flying a glow or a gas, keep the airspeed up. Once you're in the air, suck the gear up, and if you're using flaps, suck the flaps up and get some altitude. And once you're up, let's say 100 feet, you can bring it back down and start flying at a lot more scale. Now, don't fly around at full throttle all the time because twins are fast. If you got high pitch props and you got any horsepower behind it, you can flutter ailerons and elevators off them. I've always wondered if one reason the P38s have such a flutter problem in the elevator is two things: weak linkage, but also the fact the plane's probably going 100 mile an hour or faster, okay? But fly the airplane every flight like you're afraid of the engine dying. Don't get complacent. Don't start doing slow figure eight showing off to everybody how cool your multi-engine airplane is, because that engine dies. You're going to have to instinctively pull the other engine to idle, and you're going to glide it wherever you can turn it safely to land. One thing that I'm trying to think of doing a video on, I don't really know how to do it yet, is the energy you carry in an airplane. And if you've never heard of this, if you're kind of new, hang on, let me switch screens for a minute. The energy that you carry in an airplane is that, let's say the plane is going 50 mile an hour as a model. All the engines die. Because of wind resistance and the lift on the wing, you're slowing down. If you drop your nose enough, you will hold the exact 50 miles an hour you're at. So you're holding the energy. If you put the nose down more and you start to gain airspeed, you're increasing energy. That energy, let's just say you wanted to test that energy and you wanted to pull it up and do a loop. Well, that energy is carrying you in the airframe until the plane slows down because of drag, lift, and gravity. Hopefully you'd have enough energy to pull it through a loop if you're trying to glide through a loop, okay? But energy is what the inertia and the momentum you already have in the aircraft, and gravity, put the nose down, you're going to come down faster, is what you carry in the airframe. Heavier airframes will carry that energy longer because they're going to penetrate the wind. Really light ones will dissipate that really quick because of drag. So you got to put your nose way down on a really light airplane or a draggy airplane. One thing people never think about is, and if you ever heard the space shuttle land, in the early testing, they'll talk about we're on energy, or your energy's high, or I don't think I've ever heard that they were really low on energy. But because they were a glider, the shuttle was a glider. In a single engine airplane, if you take off and you lose the engine, you probably don't have enough energy to do a 180 and make it back to the runway. If you go to YouTube and look at single engine plane crashes, a lot of them where people are killed is people trying to turn back to the field. Your airplane doesn't have enough energy to get you back to the field because your engines are dead. On a twin engine airplane, when you lose one engine, you're not just losing half the power. Let's see if I can describe this right so somebody doesn't call me out. If it takes both these engines at full power to climb at a certain airspeed, when you lose the one engine, the plane's going to yaw big time, which is creating extra drag that the plane would never see unless one of the engines is dead. You're also creating a where you're not going to be able to hold like the heading. Most RC planes are going to just auger in. The air molecules on a full-scale airplane interact completely different than the air molecules on a model aircraft. So let's say in a full-scale airplane, we scaled it as close as we could to a model. And, okay, this is the reason I hate it when I've heard 2 or 3 people use the scalability. And it makes my blood pressure go up. Because a quarter-scale airplane, model airplane, doesn't weigh 1/4 of the full-scale airplane. Let's say the real airplane weighed 16,000 pounds. Okay? A quarter-scale airplane is not going to weigh 4,000 pounds. Okay? So when you think about the size of your rudder and the things that are going to go on your airplane when you lose an engine, none of that matters. You just need to pull it to idle as quick as you can. I mean, I wish, and I'm sure me and my buddy could design one of these, but I would love to have sensors on the two props. So if one engine dies, it immediately kills the other engine. It's like a prop synchronizer. Now, you may not want that on a full-scale plane because you probably can fly on one engine, at least get farther to where you need to land. You might extend where you're going. But on a model airplane, most of them don't have enough rudder or vertical stabilizer for you to really fly with one engine down. And I'm not saying all of them. I've seen some people fly pretty good on one engine. They had incredible airspeed. They had that 35 degrees of rudder available. So I'm not saying it can't be done. Okay, and I've heard people that engine's still running say, yeah, I got it back to the field because I had one engine running. When I watched that video, they didn't. If they would have killed the other engine, they still probably would have enough energy to glide back. Another thing that's really interesting is we can't feather propellers. Okay, and I don't have a twin engine here. Let me go back to my, so this kind of blew me away I've flown 3 different P38s that I think were all Zerolis in my life. One of them had the throttle linkage to the carburetor arm pop off in flight. And luckily that engine vibrated itself back to idle. We don't know why, because I was kind of at half throttle flying it. And we heard, and you need to listen to twins because you'll hear when one of the engines aren't running. You'll get used to that frequency, that tone. And when one of the engines does something weird, you'll hear the tone change. Well, this P38 I was flying, and I had just done kind of a low, kind of simulated attack on the runway. And as I was climbing out, I heard the engine going down, down, down. And I said, I'm losing an engine. So I started pulling the other throttle back. And the other one was going down slower and slower. And I said, I got plenty of energy. I'm going to make it back. I'm not sure I used energy. I said, I think I got plenty of airspeed. I know I can make it back. The whole time I'm thinking about, where am I going to land? Am I going to land straight ahead? Am I going to land in the field, the cornfield on the other side of the field? Where am I going to land this? As I brought the plane around on base to final, I was starting to sink a little bit, and I gave it just a couple of notches of throttle, and I was able to make it back to the field. And I thought, man, I did really good. I'm a kick-ass pilot. This was far out. I got to be honest, my ego was massive because I thought I had flown on one engine, a model airplane, pretty well. Month later, had one of the engines die on that airplane. I couldn't even begin to fly it. I just pulled it back to idle and we landed it. That engine running at idle was almost like the prop being feathered, because when props stop, they create the most drag. So with that engine going down to idle and not dying, I still had enough control of the airplane with the other engine just above idle to actually get it back to the field. Now, and I know I hope I'm making sense to anybody who wants to get new into this. On real aircraft, we can feather the propellers when you lose an engine. On model airplanes, we can't feather it. You've got a big air brake out there. Okay, so don't think, if you're 200 feet in the air and you want to go to full throttle on one engine and push the rudder all the way over and try to fly it, go for it. But if you start noticing your airplane's going through the air kind of like this, you'll realize that, holy cow, I can't control this. Get your idle back and it will be a glider. Okay? I want to talk about another twin I flew, and this was the scariest twin I ever flew. And of course, I just got a little 3D illustration. And it was of a P61. And this airplane was a lead sled, had big old, I don't think it had G62s in it. That sounds too big. And this was, again, 25 years ago. And actually, I flew this up at the AMA headquarters on its test flight on what is now the control line circle part. If you go to the AMA headquarters, there's a big piece of blacktop, and I think they fly control line over there now. That used to be where we flew before they had the other runways we could fly on. And this might have been 30 years ago now that I'm thinking about it. Time escapes me. But this airplane was ballistically fast. And it was so intimidating. And I probably put 30 flights on this airplane, never had an engine failure. About a month later, my friend completely destroyed it when he lost an engine flying in the downwind. And he called me up and said, man, I froze, I panicked, I freaked out. And I go, what happened? He goes, I lost an engine, and I just instinctively, try to fly it with a little bit of rudder. And as I turned from the downwind into baste, I snapped it in and stalled, spun, and it's gone. I mean, there's nothing left. And I'm like, do you think there's anything you could have done? Because if I would have pulled the engines idle, I'm sure I could have just glided it right around because I was plenty high enough. So all I'm trying to do is, I don't want to run you away from flying twins. If you're going to fly electrics, you'll probably never have an engine failure, so just have fun. But if you're flying glow or gas, in your mind, be ready to pull that throttle to idle if you hear that engine do anything that you're not commanding it to do. And always keep the energy up, the airspeed. Okay, airspeed, energy, kind of the same thing. And then I want to share something that's really kind of cool, is a friend that built an unbelievable A10. It was all balsa. He had 90 millimeter ducted fans in it. He was terrified to fly it. And I used to test fly everybody's airplane. This last 10 years, I've only flew 2 or 3 for friends that I know build good airplanes that aren't going to fall apart on me. And this was an absolute blast. And I did a couple of flybys with it really, really, really fast. And it was so cool. I mean, we could pull it up. It looked just like an A10. But then I noticed it wasn't going as fast. And I told him, I said, something's going wrong here. I don't think I'm getting full throttle. And then we saw a little bit of smoke. And it was a blue sky. And I'm like, I got to land this. Something's not right. We landed it, brought it in, completely smoked an ESC. This thing had lost one of the motors, and we didn't even really notice the change in the ducted fan noise. And I was flying around on one electric motor. The motors are so close together on this A10, and the rudders are, I mean, the vertical stabilizers are big on it, that this plane, I couldn't even tell I had lost a motor. It just slowed down. I wish I wouldn't have immediately landed it. I mean, we saw the smoke and we had to land it. But I would have loved to experiment flying overhead and see how much it was yawing on one motor. So an A10 is really kick-ass. Most of them are going to either be turbine or EDF. I don't know of that many that are today going to be, you know, a glow ducted fan. Last thing I want to talk about here is the contraption. Now, this is a fictitious airplane that doesn't exist, but it's a twin. And I would love to build one of these with like a 20-foot wingspan. Not that, I don't even know if this would fly, okay? But I want to talk about contraptions sometimes, because I've had people reach out to me in the last 5 years and say, Damon, I built this Frankenstein plane. It's got 2 or 3 motors on it. Would you suggest, what I should think about? And I said, well, number one, it will not fly on one motor. You know that, right? And he's like, yeah. I go, do you know it's going to fly on 2? And he goes, well, I'm at like 85 watts a pound. I said, well, you should be able to fly. So I love it when people are creative and they get their creative juices and they build Frankenstein planes. I'm building a 220-inch Frankenstein transport plane right now that will be done next spring. It's got 4 engines, 2 are pullers and 2 are tractors and 2 are pushers. And it is a Frankenstein plane. But any of you out there that just want to invent, I don't care if you've got, I had the idea for a while of having a motor facing the wrong direction on my transport. So when I land, it's my reverse thrust. Okay? I'm not going to do that because of the weight of the plane and the systems I'm wanting to carry. But, and I may turn around and still do that. I mean, this transport of mine is going to have, like I said, 2 tractors, 2 pushers, and then it's going to have 4 EDFs stuck in the tail of it. They're only going to give me about 4 pounds of thrust or 6 or something like that. But I'm just putting them on there to make it a Frankenstein plane. Excuse me. But I really would beg you, if you want to get into multi-engine or motor RC aircraft, do it. But just remember, if it's glow or gas and you lose an engine, pull it back to idle. And then if you need to add a little bit of power, see if your skills and the airframe will allow you to fly on one engine. My experience is you're much more safer just to land the airplane in the direction it's already going, unless you're really high and you've got plenty of energy to bring it around and land it. But keep in mind, even though one engine's at idle, you have almost no drag on that engine when you're landing. The other engine that's not turning has a lot more, or the propellers have a lot more drag, okay? So in ending this, all I want you to think about is, your airframe, power, size, weight, rudder size, and skills. Go out and get a twin. I would love to take the Zeroli C47 drawings here and blow them up and make an all balsa with a little bit of carbon fiber and plywood and make it a big electric. I think that would be really good. But to be honest, there's a lot of them out there, and I like to go where people don't normally want to go. And I'm not doing that just so people can go, oh, that's a one of a kind. Which, by the way, one of my airplanes made it into Model Airplane News, and it's called One of a Kind, I think it is. But I just want you to understand that any type of model aircraft that you want to get into, all you need to think about is, do you have the skills to fly it? You can. I mean, I'm still not a great pilot compared to 3D people and scale people and the iMac and the pattern people. I'm a horrible pilot like that. But I'm a really good rudder pilot. And if you watch any of the video of my planes flying, the turns look beautiful. I fly very scale. Okay? But on twins, you lose an engine. And you've got, don't destroy an airplane seeing if you're good enough to fly on one engine, unless you're really, really high. And I mean an altitude. I don't mean like with edibles or cocaine or anything. Just get the airplane really high in the air, like 399 feet. And then you can mess around with maybe with your radio turning off an engine and seeing if your skills will fly the airplane. I'm just telling you my own personal experiences to fly safe and to have success, everybody. Okay, I know there's going to be people that's going to post, oh, I've got a twin, I've lost the engine, I fly it. Great, I'm glad you can, and that's awesome. Share your experiences on my post to share your knowledge and wealth. My experience says, if you want to keep the audience safe, spectators safe, yourself safe, and your airframe safe, just try to land as soon as you can when you lose an engine, okay? But if you're electric and everything's sized right, you'll never lose an engine. I shouldn't say that because, I mean, you can put in a bad battery and not know it. You know, ESCs are only going to last so long. You know, you might not do a proper pre-flight and realize you got a propeller with a big chip in it, and that propeller explodes in the air and you lost an engine, okay? Thanks for watching my videos, everybody. I'm sorry they go so long. I try to keep them shorter because I don't want to put you to sleep. It just, when I talk about these subjects, they're not just simple yank and bank subjects. I'm trying to help teach people or share my experiences with people so you can have success, okay? I always end my videos with saying, take a kid flying, okay? 6 years and up, we have to have them in our hobby. We need to embrace them. We need to love them. We need to tell them that quads, drones, helis, warbirds, contraptions are awesome, okay? I mean, I just did a video the other day on flying tail draggers where a younger kid was told by a bunch of douchebags at a flying field that you need to fly 2 years before you're capable of starting to fly a tail dragger. Then I had another follower say, I learned to fly on tail draggers. I know a kid that learned on real flight flying tail draggers, and his first solo was in a tail dragger on a model airplane. So we got to embrace the youth. We got to embrace the young people. We've got to embrace everybody who loves model aviation. Okay, folks? Have a great day. Be safe. And as always, say rock on. See you next time. Bye.